Okay, so for your very first experience touching clay, at least in this class, it's going to be doing pinch pots. So, pinching a pot open is a really old technique because it doesn't require any tools. Pinching a pot open, we use just our pinchers, we use just our hands. So, this is a technique that's been done since people started working with clay because it was before really the invention of any other types of tools to help us do any other techniques that we will be looking at in this class and even beyond into the any sort of future you have with ceramics and clay. So this is a pinch pot that I made in high school, and since I'm in my parents' basement, I found this in my mother's bedroom and thought I would just use this as my water container. But I thought it was actually like a fairly good example of how thin a pinch pot should be. This is about a little bit thinner than a quarter-inch thick, and it has a foot as well. And I also it has a nice angle in it. I did it in high school, so I can't quite remember how exactly I put the angle in, but that's something that's really easy to do. So for your pinch pot, I want you to spend just like a few hours trying to really thin it out, really make sure that the walls of your pinch pot are the same width and have a nice concise evenness around it. And I want you to also go ahead and try to create a foot at the bottom here. Just pour this water out really quick so you can see this is my foot that I added on, which can be sort of pinched on. You can coil this on, but I'm just going to show you how to pinch things. We're going to not really think about any sort of extra tools that we might have in our toolbox. We just want to really focus on our hands and focus on the clay and be in touch with the moisture of the clay, make sure it doesn't dry out too much, and make sure that it isn't too wet too. So get my water back in here, my little pinch pot. All you need for this is your hands and some clay and a little bit of water. So you have either your dental floss or your wire tool, and you can scoop that off and start with some of that. But I am just going to claw off my clay. And I want enough clay to weigh almost 2 pounds. That might be hard for you to estimate all by yourself, but a 2 pound ball of clay is going to fit into your hands like a medium size muffin, or even, let's see, maybe a little bit bigger than a tennis ball. You don't want this to get too big. If anything, a little bit smaller will definitely be easier to start. So just try to go for about a tennis ball to a little bit bigger of a tennis ball size circle of clay that you just, or rather, um, globe of clay that you can just claw off of your big chunk that comes from your bag. Okay, so now that I've clawed this off, I'm going to use this part of my pad of my wrist and start compressing this ball of clay like so. And rotating the ball as well in this hand as I slap it with this hand, just to start molding it into the most perfect globe that I possibly can. And when I say globe, I also mean sphere. I get those words really mixed up. So yeah, just remember to try to use this part of your palm because it's reinforced by your entire arm of your hand. And just really want to kind of watch out for our wrists and any other, like our backs. Just be sort of mindful while you're working with clay. I certainly have hurt myself with repetitive and tedious motions when I am working on my projects. So Always feel free to take a break, stretch out your hands. If I'm asking you to do this for 3 hours, I definitely expect you to take 3 breaks stretching your hands just to protect yourself. And, you know, getting hurt physically in a ceramics class online is going to affect your quality of life. So let's just try to avoid that by making sure you take stretch breaks. Okay, back to patting this into a better looking sphere. Patting away. Okay, so my sphere has some indents or some lines. Anytime you run into any sort of like lines that are in your sphere, you're going to take your thumb, the pad of your thumb, and you're going to run over those lines, enclosing any sort of lines that you see on this ball of clay will help condense all of this outer surface area, and it's going to ensure less cracking as you begin to open up and pinch this clay into a pot shape. Okay. So there is my little tennis ball. It's actually about the size of a tennis ball after patting it down. So I am going to place this tennis ball shape or size of clay into my left palm of my hand because I'm predominantly right-handed. Although working with ceramics has made me a little bit ambidextrous. I am going to take my right thumb and I'm going to look at it really quick. So my right thumb has a curve. Everybody has different fingers, but look at your thumb. Does your thumb have a good curvature to it, or is your thumb rather straight? If your thumb is super curved, I want you to try to straighten out your thumb and think of it in a straight line, because we're going to use our thumb. We're going to press down in the middle of the sphere, and we're going to go, we don't want to go through the other side of this clay. This is how we're making the opening over here. So we're going to take our thumb, press it all the way down, and we want to stop when we're maybe a quarter inch to a half inch thick, half inch away from this bottom. There's no way for you to actually see with your eyes. If you press your thumb all the way through the hole, you're going to have to restart. Otherwise, you can sometimes feel, once I put my thumb down in here, I'll be able to feel it down here. And that's when I know that I need to stop, because if I go any further, I'll press that hole in. So I got my thumb and trying to make it very straight. I want to go straight down. And if I have a curve, I want to straighten up, like I said, because if I do have a curve, I'm going to push and end up pushing the hole, first initial hole, in a direction that goes to the side of my sphere. So try to go straight up and down. It'll make the rest of the process a lot easier. Okay, so here I go. I'm gonna go straight down. And once I feel it a little bit on the other side in the palm of my hand, I'm gonna try to stop. I don't wanna go all the way through. There's some suction that's happening, so I'm just gonna twist my thumb out of there. I got some cracks that ended up expanding on the outside of my pot. Before I do anything else, I'm going to take a little bit of water and even use my fingernail a little bit, the back of my fingernail, to close up that seam. I can even press that down on the table a little bit too, to compress that. I have a lot of cracks. I found a relatively old bag of clay, so it's a little bit drier than a fresh bag of clay from the manufacturers. Oh yeah, also, let's do this too really quick. This is good practice to get into. We got to make sure that when we're doing this pinch pot, we have to tie off our bag of clay. That's really important because you don't want to spend 3 to 4 hours on a project, forget that your clay bag is open, and have all of this wonderful material dry out for you to not be able to use for your future projects. So, just also a word to the wise besides tying off our clay when we're not using it for this pinch pot project and for all the other projects. You don't want your clay to get overly wet while you're doing this. Like, notice how I'm just adding a little bit of water at a time. You don't want to drench your pinch pot with tons of water. It's just going to make the clay super soft, and then you're going to lose control. And if you let it dry out too much, then you're not going to be able to really push and pull the clay the way that you want to. It won't be as malleable as you want it to be. And so that'll prevent you from taking your pieces even further. So just adding a little bit of water, a little bit at a time is a really great way to preserve your project's moisture while you work on them. Okay, so here we are again. It looks almost like a belly button. I already put my thumb in there. And there's so many ways that you can do this. Some of you might find that your hands feel a little bit weak, and I promise you by the end of the semester, after doing all of this work with clay, your hands will get stronger. But we're gonna just take a whole bunch of time pinching this out. So one thing that I've taught people to do before, if they feel like their hands are a little bit weak, is to use the table and the momentum of your pinch pot, since it's a circular shape, to move back and forth while you are pinching. That's one way to sort of open up and widen up the opening of your pot. Remember, this is going to be the opening, and this is going to be the bottom. You can also just place it in the palm of your hand and just rotate it and pinch and pinch and pinch. Pinch up the pinch pot to the point where 2 of your thumbs can fit in. I'm not quite there yet. And as I'm going, I'm finding I'm getting a lot of cracks. So I'm going to take a little water and I'm going to add that on there. Close up those seams. Because if I don't, those cracks are just going to get wider and bigger, and I'll run into a little bit of a mess. There's my cat, Rhubarb. Say hi, Rhubarb. Glad that you all get to see her in this very first video. She is my art critic. And also TA, she's your teacher assistant. She's an art critic, and she's just an overall really sweet lover. Okay, so I think pinch this up a little bit more. Be aware of the way that you're pinching. I'm not using the tips of my fingers when I'm pinching. I'm actually using the entire surface area of my fingertips to pinch. If you use your fingertips, you're going to make bigger indents, and you want to keep the walls you want the walls to be the same thickness. So it's just very much, you just pinch away little by little, and you can't really force it to do anything. And ceramics will teach you patience. Almost, I feel like working with kids, dealing with the elderly. I say dealing with because I'm dealing with helping my mom right now, who's kind of dealing with her just becoming senile. So children, elderly, and ceramics, and even many other art forms will teach you a lot of patience in your life. Okay, so at this point, I can fit 2 of my thumbs in there, which is gonna expedite the process. And I'm gonna put 2 thumbs in there, just twist and pinch and twist and pinch and twist and pinch. I can use a table once again to twist and pinch and twist and pinch. Okay. Going back with the water, rubbing out any cracks that are occurring. And let's see what's next. Oh yeah, so we're widening out our little sphere of clay that we started with. Now it's time to lift the height of this just a bit. So going back to our thumb, my right thumb, the one that I use to push this hole in, my right thumb is also the tool I'm going to use to bring the clay from the bottom of my pot up to the top. I like to think of Michelangelo's illustration of like the human body and all the way that the human bodies move in circles. Our thumb, when it goes in this motion, is rather circular. It makes up a little curve of a circle. So I'm going to take my thumb. Sorry, just saw another crack there. I'm going to take my thumb and I'm putting it in the, like this. I'm putting my pinch pot on top of my thumb. I'm going to take the clay and I'm going to drag it from the bottom up. I'm going to do this all the way around and I'll show you a bit more what I'm talking about. Taking the clay with my thumb and I'm pulling it from the bottom up using this motion and doing that as I rotate the sphere 360 degrees to make sure I do that to the entire inside. So then see how I have these little clumps of clay? It's almost like a flower petals I created inside of my pinch pot from taking that clay from the bottom to the top. And you just want to do that a little bit of a time at a time. Don't grab like a whole bunch. So you can see that little gathering of the clay. I brought that clay from the bottom to the top. So after I do that, then I'm gonna go ahead and stick my thumb in and just repeat the pinching motion. This is how we're going to even out the walls, widen it, and then kind of lift it and raise it with a little bit of height. Add a little, just a tiny bit of water. If your hands are getting really dirty and slimy and sloppery and the pinch pot is flying out of your hands, that means you're using too much water. And it's probably going to be frustrating for you because your hands are getting dry and they're filled with ceramic dust and they're wet, and it's actually, that's going to turn into slip on your hands. So it's nice to have just some water and a rag to have your hands clean. It's going to always be easier working with clay when your hands are on the cleaner side. That's why it's nice to have a rag nearby to have your hands dry and clean, which is, that's very different from wheel throwing, but we will talk about that in the future. Working on getting rid of my seams that are opening up, these cracks that are opening up. Okay. And if you have like the same cracks that keep on reappearing, then use your nail. Use your nail to cover up those seams because your nail digs in to the surface a little bit deeper, which helps connect those seams and prevents it from opening it up when I decide to pinch and rotate this again. Or actually, I already pinched and rotated it. I'm sorry. So then the next step would be to stick my thumb in again, like I did before, and pull the clay from the bottom to the top. As I rotate my pot 360 degrees, making sure my thumb on the inside pulls that clay from the bottom to the top on all the surface area of the inside. Once again, to ensure the same thickness throughout the walls of my pot. Okay. So I really want you to focus on like the bottom and thinning out the bottom, and then you slowly end up thinning out the middle, and then you end up thinning out the top. You really want to thin out the bottom. When the bottom is at its the appropriate thinness, as you press and move it around, you'll feel that. You can start working on like the middle part, right? This kind of the belly of your pot. And you can start compressing that and making sure that is the same thinness. And my seams, they're showing up again, those cracks. So I just added a lot of water this time because I'm really working the clay. I'm even creating friction. I'm creating heat as I rub this pinch pot, and that will dry out my piece fairly quickly also. And I'm in an environment too, since I'm in my parents' basement right next to this furnace, and that will definitely affect my clay as well and dry out my clay a lot faster than maybe those of you who could be working in a place that has a rainy season happening right now. Okay, so my bottom is feeling fairly thin. Actually, I just realized I switched hands. I'm checking out the, sometimes I can't feel how thick everything is with the same right hand that I've been using and working with. And maybe it's because my right hand is getting tired. So I switched and I have my left thumb in my pinch pot now. And it, for some reason, I feel like it's maybe because I'm not so tired in this hand that I can feel the thickness. Moment, go back and forth, use the water to get rid of the cracks once again. I see that I have like a little piece of glitter in my clay, and I'm not going to worry about that. Like if you ever get something like glitter or hair or fiber in your clay, that those little pieces will just burn out in the firing. So don't worry about that. But I definitely don't put other materials in your clay besides, you know, just clay. We need just clay, and especially if you decide to fire it, um, because we don't want to, you know, make the fire alarm go off by burning any random material in a kiln that was unexpected for the kiln technicians who are doing the firing. Okay, so this is getting pretty open. So look how thick this is. This is about a half-inch thick. I could spend like probably another hour just really going like pinching this and making this into a really beautiful, delicate looking pinch pot. And I really love how it's just very natural feeling. It has a very organic feeling. The entire rim doesn't really feel like it isn't level, and I like that. I think that's kind of the beautiful nature of the pinch pot, and it'll be different every single time, and you can really see the hand and the artistry that goes into pinch pots as well, and the care that goes in. And though there's like also kind of an illusion that can happen here too. So let's say the walls down here are not so thick. I can make this illusion that my pinch pot is really, really thin by just taking the time to thin out this very top part. And that might make it actually look very beautiful, although it could affect the functionality of it. That is just something to maybe start thinking about as you are a beginner, or most of us here are beginners with working with clay. For now, you can kind of choose, oh, do I want to go for the illusion or do I want to go for the functionality? That's looking pretty great. It's a great size. I like it. I could definitely sit here and refine it, but just for the sake of, saving time, I'm going to skip to the next step. And I'm going to show you how you can work with making a little foot in the bottom of your pinch pot. So this is a opening is like big enough for me to just place my hand in here like this, which it makes it easy to hold and I'm not destroying the form that I just created. So I'm holding it, my pinch pot like this, and I'm going to use the pad of my thumb to make a foot. And I'm really just going to twist this pot and push the clay towards the middle. Now I can use all of my fingers to kind of pinch this bottom foot together, making a lump. I have my little fingers in like a C shape here, and I can hold them as I twist back and forth to get that natural looking foot shape. Now I'm going to use my thumb to just press and make a side angle for the foot as well. And my foot actually seems to be a little bit off center. So I'm going to try to just pinch that and manipulate that to be a little bit closer to the center. You'll find that it might be changing the form on the inside. And since this is your first time, that's really okay for now. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to go in and use the pad of my middle finger and just scoop that clay up so the inside can be as loved and cared for as the outside, which I think is very important for functional work and pieces that are where you can easily see the inside as well. Okay, flip this back upside down. Got a huge seam coming through. Okay, see how I made a little nub? This is going to be the foot of my pinch pot. So this little nub is very, very round. So I'm going to use the gravity of my pinch pot and I'm just going to bang it gently. I want it to be able to stand on its own too. So I'm going to bang it gently, make sure it can stand. And my foot got a little bit squished in there. But this is, like I said, all of this pinch pot work is just very much a back and forth of adding water, manipulating the form, checking the outside shape and how it affected the inside shape and being aware of that. Bring this again on the table. I think that's looking actually rather precious. My foot is really small on this one. And so this is going to just vary. This is going to be a learning experience for you. Some of you might get a really big foot, and that meant that you left a really thick amount of clay on your, what after the step of where you put your thumb into the sphere of clay, that you left a good amount at the bottom. So I definitely recommend doing that. If so, you can have a bigger foot, but my foot came out really small because I went in so deep with my thumb. So that is how you make a pinch pot. And I hope you have fun. And you are welcome to do whatever you want with your pinch pot when you're done. You can recycle it and just put it back into your clay bag if you want. You can try making a couple more if you feel like your first one wasn't really that great. You can also fire this when you want to as well. So thank you very much.